Welcome to the Spoilercast for Rehydrate. This episode will contain spoilers for all of the Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's End. There are no future events to be spoiled on, but if you haven't read these, please skip this episode. This is Season 5, Episode 6, Singer, where we will be discussing Part 5 of Death's End by Lucy Shin. My name is Amin, and I've only read up to the current reading.
My name is Thalia, and I've read all three of these books, and I'm rereading along with the Spoilercast.
Hey, this is Dan. I've also read the entire series. So just a bit of follow-up and notes about the show. So like Amin mentioned, this is the last episode of the Spoilercast because next episode of the main show will be the last part of this series. So all spoilers will be in play, and Talia will be joining us for that episode. So it's a combined Spoilercast and main show. So it'd be a good time. Mm-hmm. Going forward past Remembrance Past, I have put the season 6 episode reading list up on the website. And like I said before, we'll be covering the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. That includes Foundation, Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation. So if you like to read along with us, you should check out the reading list on the website. And we had Frank on the main show for the last one, and he had a little bit of follow-up that he considered might be a spoiler. So I'm going to let Talia take that one because it includes some Chinese, and hers is much, much better than mine.
Well, we'll see. So the follow-up that we got was that death is a recurring theme in the last two sections of Death's End. And speaking of Death's End, that may not be the accurate translation of the original edition's title. The original title is 四神永生. So 四神 means the god of death. Yeah, I see that. Shen is like anything spiritual. Si is death, it's the god of death. And Yongsheng means immortality. Forever living. Yeah, or lives forever. So the original title has no other disambiguation. I know we were puzzling over what Death's End could mean on the fairy tale episode of Priya, and Frank is saying that it's unambiguous in Chinese. The god of death lives forever. So does that change your understanding of the series at all?
I kind of like that title more than Death's End, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I said before last time, like my understanding was kind of simplistic of just the hibernation. But I think like given your perspectives and your opinions on it, there's a grander meaning to it. I think this just lends itself even more to that grander meaning of Death's End.
I think Tim brought it up on the main show that even if you don't consider yourself traditionally religious, humans have invented all sorts of things that we, worship and see as laws, whether it's like science or believing that there, must be a continuation for their own family or their own species, and maybe one of the religions that we have dreamt up and the only true one is death, like that one is forever. That's sort of what Tim's comments make me think of.
Okay, well, I think let's just jump right into the summary for this episode. We meet Zinger, whose job is to determine sincerity of coordinates to cleanse or not. Chengxin and AA awake from hibernation to learn that there's an incoming dark forest strike, but it's not a photoid, but it's a slip of paper. They travel to Pluto and meet with Luo Ji to distribute artifacts into space. Shortly after, the entire solar system is two-dimensionalized. Luo Ji surprises them by saying that they secretly installed a curvature propulsion drive aboard Halo and tells them they can go pretty much anywhere, and they will be the only two to escape. And finally, Chengxin decides to keep her date with Yan Tianming and sets course for our star. So I had a question for Thalia that I want to lead off the episode. We talked about before, a couple episodes ago, I think, about your theory that it wasn't actually Singer who actually destroyed the universe with this two-vector foil.
I don't know if this can be proved, but we delve into a bunch of conspiracy theories, I think, probably in this chapter. And it's sort of endorsed by the idea of the Dark Forest itself, which is that naivete, what's his quote, naivete and ignorance are not impediments to survival, but arrogance is. And that's the reason that humanity's bunker world never worked, because if they were smart enough to think of hiding behind Jupiter, someone else is smart enough to think about that. And similarly, if Singer was able to deduce that he should throw a foil, then someone else would have. So the actual evidence is plucked from a Redditor who does have a post saying, like, does anyone else notice the trick that Leo pulled? And the trick is that the actual foil that destroyed the solar system arrives in the bunker era year 66. And one of the delightful things about the Singer chapter is that it just opens in media res in bunker year 67.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Yeah, it's pretty eagle-eyed there. So yeah, I mean, he did talk a lot about like the millions of civilizations out there that have the cleansing gene, and he's just one of however many civilizations that are sending these two vector foils out there. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so I guess the foil that he sent will have no effect when it actually gets there because everything is two-dimensionalized already.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it would speed up the process. I'm not really sure on the physics of that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, well, thanks for catching that, and thanks to the Redditor for also catching that. Did you catch that on your own, or just when you saw the Reddit post?
Well, I think I definitely didn't catch it the first time I read. And then the second time I read, I was a little bit more, looking, sleuthing, as we do. So I was looking it up then. But I do remember I was, sharing this book, as we've all often tried to do. We share it with other people. And they sort of rolled their eyes when they read, like, the first line. It was like, Orion, arm of the Milky Way. And they're like, how is blue space going to make it all the way to here? Because they thought it was like opening in humanity. And I think that Frank was right when he says it's just such a satisfying chapter, much like the Trisolaans chapter, because there's no time wasted on like, meanwhile, far away in a galaxy far, far away in Trisolaans, it just drops us right in the middle and is like, figure it out. And it's very satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. Just the change of perspective and just like, it's like a lore dump, right? But like in a really cool way of, trusting the audience to kind of figure out and go back and, kind of reread it and just be immersed in that world and think about like what that means. And then like seeing the communication between the two worlds from like a different perspective, from a completely outside observer, how he talks about he thinks it's so interesting about the communication. Like they sent their messages and then they replied, and like that's very strange. Like that was all very satisfying to read. So one of the ones that I think, I mean, we talked about the slow fog a little bit on the main show as well, but the next chapter, part 6 of the book, really talks more about like the death lines and the actual ramifications of being in the curvature propulsion lines trails that it leaves behind. Singer soon understood why the cleansing had happened so fast. He saw slow fog in the vicinity of the destroyed world. So it does have to be the curvature propulsion lines or death lines that they come to know. Although like death lines I think are a little bit different. I was looking ahead a little bit, and it seems like the death lines are closer to zero light speed than the regular curvature propulsion lines. Maybe for more advanced drives, maybe, because they talk about also how you can't, just like the boat, you can't go back through if you have like the soap, the boat with the soap going through the water.
The surface tension is broken.
Yeah, you can't go back on it unless you have a more powerful, something that breaks the surface tension even more. And so I think that's the case here, is that you have these curvature propulsion lines all over the place.
Yeah, basically, like they see signs of like, I don't know, fracking on a massive scale, and it just like leaves behind this destruction of the natural environment. Definitely. I don't know if it's more advanced. It's definitely more technologically advanced.
Right.
But I don't know if Trisolaans would even, I don't know if they can build, ships that can do that. But again, maybe they wouldn't want to, because we don't have any evidence that Trisolaans is like trying to deliberately, create death like the Zero Homers. Of course, that's fodder for next episode. But here on the Spoilercast, we can talk about it. Yeah. I don't think we do find out some really interesting things. I almost thought we were done hearing about the Trisolaans, but it was kind of interesting to hear that they had like lied to humans in this chapter. We get a lot of answers to life outside of our own cosmos in this chapter. I don't know. What were your impressions as you like reread this, as opposed to just, I thought it was pretty suspenseful and page turning the first time I read it, but I slowed down the second time.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think I mentioned this also on the main show. Like when I first read it, I didn't think that they were actually going to destroy the entire solar system. Like I thought they're going to get out of it somehow. It's like, no, they did it. When you first read it, did you have the assumption that it was inevitable that it was going to happen, or did you think they're going to get out of it?
Oh boy, I think you addressed it really well on the main show itself. So even if you are like, in the habit of only listening to the Spoilercast because you're already familiar with his works, I would definitely listen to the main show on This Week, because they sort of talk about the absurdity. Like, it's not, when humanity sort of imagines its own destructions, it's like at the hands of an emperor or like a king or like the Terminator. It's this super powerful, awe-inspiring like monarch in a high social class. And it's very interesting that this is like a case file that some grudge worker has to do. And that was Earth.
I kind of knew more than I knew the solar system was going to be flattened, but I think the suspenseful part for me was whether or not Luo Ji would get away, or what his ending would be. So I thought that was, again, I think he made the wrong decision, but I think it was well done.
Oh, no, he rests in peace, and may he rest in peace.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just knew that, he even said as much, that he wasn't going to last very much longer. He's 200 years old. Even if he was on that ship, he wouldn't probably be able to actually father any children or anything. What's the point of him, actually continuing on? And he also knew that because the other galactic humans had sent messages to the bunker era, or to the bunker bunker worlds, that there's people out there, and then like his hope is that they're actually able to meet up with those humans, and then because the ship is equipped with gravitational waves, that they can kind of meet each other, and they do, which is great.
You still think that he made the wrong decision? I mean, he got to like have a cup of hot tea and tell young people a long story and give advice. I feel like that's a perfect day for an old person.
But I think he could have imparted more advice as they were traversing the galaxy, I guess.
Maybe. I think like it would, I mean, obviously I think they should have had another person on there, or, like it would have been great if like, Cao Bin was able to do it, but I think they explained that, because of timing and logistics, he wasn't able to come. But they should have planned a little bit better, I think.
But it was such a dignified ending, I thought.
So yeah, also like Thalia mentioned, I didn't want to put it. I was kind of on the offense about putting the Trisolaans stuff in this episode, because we do get a little bit more Trisolaans stuff in the next one, especially with Sofan coming back. But I think it was interesting how there's two things about the Trisolaans that kind of came up, which was, first of all, they're more tricky than expected. They apparently were lying most of the time when they were in the sharing knowledge collaboration. So the quote goes, many results that the Trisolaans had passed on were falsified. Based on the high level of technologies the Trisolaans were able later to achieve, it was inconceivable that they had made such mistakes in fundamental theory. The only conclusion was that they lied to humans even in the areas of basic theory. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting that the whole time, like even when the cooperation, like they were lying to us, and then apparently they had developed either the way to lie, or maybe they're lying the whole time about being able not to lie. I don't know. And the other thing I thought was interesting was that the ship that Changxin and AA get, Halo, is actually built out of strong interaction material. So I don't know if they got that from the Trisolaans or their research, but it's hard to know. But apparently, like that's a really hard thing to harness, and they're able to do it with Halo or something approximating strong interaction. So, do you guys think that the Trisolaans themselves were be able to lie the whole time, or they just got better at it over time?
I read it as they got better at it over time, but
Yeah.
now hearing you say this, I'm wondering if they were unreliable narrators in terms of what they can and can't do.
Right. They weren't able to lie to each other because of the communicating the thoughts over light, but they never talked to us directly with the light, right? They just talked to us over Sofan via whatever mechanism, or the self, whatever the code to speak English, basically, or Chinese to us.
I just remember that they talk about the Trisolaans taking a huge risk by launching their second fleet, before Chongqing's career as the sword holder ended. But it seems like if they were lying about very fundamental principles of math, that would be an even bigger risk if people happened to find out that they were true. I don't know. What do you think?
It'd be a risk. A risk how? I mean, like we would like send the broadcast even earlier if you find out they're lying.
Yeah, well, if you found out that they were lying, then maybe we wouldn't need a new sword holder like Luo Ji, or someone else would just have initiated the broadcast before they even had the sword holder, because they'd apparently been lying all the way through the deterrence era, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. They took that big risk of the Lightspeed chips, and then definitely possible if we figured out. Like, I guess it depends on how smart humans are, and given this series, it doesn't seem they're very smart. If they're able to figure out or kind of come to a conclusion that they're lying in a malicious way, I don't know if the humans ever would have got there. Especially because they just figured that they're so far behind in technology, or the Trisolaans are so far advanced, they just we maybe don't understand it.
So on the main show, there's a more detailed breakdown of the different types of broadcasts that the alien singer is noticing and thinking about. And we see the concept of membranes again in the next chapter, because it's a fundamental principle in Trisolaran cosmology, whereas we have developed theories like loop quantum gravity and string theory. Apparently an understood principle of Trisolaran cosmology is about membranes. And as the drudge worker singer is, speculating on the primitive membrane broadcast, the radio waves that humans sent, he says that even short membrane could be used, although receiving a broadcast like that would make the senders akin to gods, which is a very confusing realization for a number of reasons. The first of them would be that it seemed to be implied, both in this chapter and the next one, that the only people who send out coordinates are people who are unable to cleanse by themselves. So to send out coordinates using godlike technology would seem to be maybe only possible from a type 3 civilization that has an ethics of pure benevolence and has nonviolence genetically embedded in them. And I also wondered if the short membrane that he talks about is in fact the membrane of this universe, the universe that Guan Yifan studies, the one that's 16 billion light years across. And we actually see a message that is sent out of the universe in the next chapter. And maybe, Dan, you pulled some excellent quotes about it. Maybe that's a short membrane broadcast. Maybe that's the first one that's ever happened, the first and last one.
Yeah, I had pulled it just because you had mentioned it before, and about especially about the amount of energy that it takes. So the quote's kind of long, but I'll read it anyway. They also cared about the answer to one question in particular: could the mini universe communicate with the great universe? Mini universe being the pocket universe that they eventually go into. Sofan told them that there was no way for the mini universe to transmit any information to the greater universe, but it was possible for the mini universe to receive broadcasts from the great universe. She explained that all universes were a bubble above a super membrane. This was a fundamental conceptual image from Trisolaran physics and cosmology, and she could explain it no further. The great universe had enough energy to propagate information across a super membrane. However, this was difficult and required a great expenditure of energy. The great universe would have to convert a Milky Way's worth of matter into pure energy. As a matter of fact, the monitoring system of Universe 647 often received messages from other great universes on the supermembrane. Some were natural phenomena, some were messages from intelligent beings that could not be decoded, but they had never received any messages from the particular great universe that they had come from. And later, when they actually get the message, Sofan says, "We've received a supermembrane broadcast from the great universe." Sofan brought up a window and enlarged it. To make the window easier to see, she also dimmed the sun. Apparently, someone harvested the amount of energy that the entire Milky Way has to send this message to all the pocket universes. So it's still not totally clear to me what supermembrane is in here, but maybe you have a better idea.
I think that whoever sent the message was not busy quibbling about Mundicide or galaxy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you can harvest the entire energy of an entire galaxy, then you probably don't care. And it's kind of similar to the way if you go all the way back to the three-body problem, where we saw all these many civilizations when they're unfolding that proton, and they noticed that oh, well, these protons probably contain all their universe's own. We don't really care about those either. So it's sort of a similar concept, right? Where these super civilizations are not concerned with just the goings on of all the little civilizations, including harvesting the entire energy from a civilization. And I guess that's the Zero Homers. I guess they're only concerned with the entire universe being reset into a proper state.
That would be a good enough time as any to bring it up. The idea of like collapsing a galaxy, I guess we're kind of ahead of ourselves, because what happens in this chapter is collapsing a whole solar system. And I know Frank mentioned this chapter is satisfying because it's, it's a summation of the last 3 books. It's dispassionate, but it's all in this one chapter in a few lines. And I think it was Amin mentioned that it does require the trust of the reader. And I was wondering if you could think of other similar moments in fiction, like the Singer chapter. I guessed for Dan, because he's mentioned on the show that he's a Game of Thrones and Story of Fire and Ice story, that it would be from that series.
I think that's definitely one of them where it's a really big surprising event. I would say it's a little bit different. So I saw your note on this and I was trying to think of other good analogies where the entire focus of something totally changes and they're trusting the reader or the watcher to kind of go along with it and like go and understand. And so I'm going to go with my other well of TV and media that I like, is just Star Trek, but I'm not going to go to Next Generation. I'm going to go to Deep Space Nine, which is my favorite of the series, and think about how the show changed when they started the Dominion War. Star Trek and that before that had always been kind of a serialized kind of space adventure show. And Deep Space Nine in general kind of changed that paradigm, but it even changed it even more into like a big, long serialized arc when they started the Dominion War. So they would have like the plots wouldn't resolve in one episode. It would take the entire series or the entire season or maybe multiple seasons for the arcs to resolve. So that was sort of the biggest analogy that I thought of just when, since I saw your note. I think the Game of Thrones one is interesting, but it's more of a surprise thing, I guess. And not that the 2-dimensionalization isn't surprising. Yeah, maybe it is analogous too, because it's surprising in the actual moment, but when you go back and think about it, it's like, oh, it does kind of make sense. It kind of it set up that groundwork ahead of time. But Deep Space Nine does too.
It's a really good answer.
How about Amin? Do you have any other big analogous events that you can think of in media that you've liked that have been surprising?
I was trying to think of the same thing. It's I'm sure I've watched movies where I didn't quite understand what was going on, but I can't think of a specific example right now.
That's like a hallmark of like all the best TV shows, right? Is when they trust the audience. We always complain about the exposition dumps, right? Because they're lame. Like you don't want to see like someone just like talk about what happened. You want the kind of realization to like to kind of wave over the audience without having to like handhold them, right?
I guess that's why like Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad are so good.
That's where I was going to go. It's like Breaking Bad is great because like you just kind of come along for the ride. I was also thinking like Mr. Robot is in the similar vein where like they don't just explain every like detail to you, but like it kind of unfolds for you and you're just kind of along for the ride too. And it's kind of like a mystery, like a computer mystery kind of thing, but like a psychological, I don't know. If you haven't watched Mr. Robot, you should. Those kind of more intelligent shows or movies, I think, is in a similar vein. So hopefully they do it justice in the TV show of this, but I don't know. We'll see.
I know you talked about on the main show sort of this sliding scale that we see sketched out now that we've seen at least 3 civilizations, ranging from like transparent thought to ability to lie to finally, Singer's race, which is, if not pure totalitarianism, like really close to it.
Yeah.
And on the other side would be humanity, just because they can conceal, they can create a plan like the wall freezers, and they can produce, I don't know, like a General Cao Cao. That's one that I guess Chinese readers will know better. But the ability to like prevaricate and have this freedom. And I was wondering, in that pure totalitarianism system that Singer's has, you see his superior like ruffling through his thoughts. Do you think, the way I read it, he had the ability to actually remove them?
Oh, I didn't.
Not just see them, but like have a measure of control over it. And I also think that Singer has that same measure of control over himself. Like when he has this idea, he can choose to just like remove the thought and not have it anymore. Is that how you read it too?
I didn't read it that way. I read it more of like, he was able to like look through his thoughts, like looking through like a paper, like a file or something. I think it was like ruffling through his thoughts. And Singer seemed to like just let it happen. And I think if he had thought that it's dangerous, that he couldn't have done anything about it, right? It's like, if you get into someone's browser history, like, and you see like they're looking at some illicit material or whatever, like they can't really remove it. Like that's how I thought it was, like browser history, right?
I guess like true totalitarianism would be not just the ability to monitor thought, but like remove it. So I guess maybe they haven't quite reached that stage in their evolution.
Yeah, in my mind, it was more like if they did have bad thoughts, or thoughts that were dangerous, then he'd be more akin to a dissident and maybe be executed or something like that, because they wouldn't want that thought to propagate to the other people or spread or be dangerous, right? That was my understanding of it. Like they had the ability to take action on it, but I don't think, because of like the state that they're in, I don't think they would care for the individual, especially just a worker, right? Like if that individual is dangerous, then just get rid of him. And that's probably an analog to a lot of, political, I think, especially in China, like maybe not currently, but like before, where there are other totalitarian states where I think like North Korea, like if people have like dangerous thoughts or even perceived dangerous thoughts, they'd throw them in concentration camps or whatever.
Right, but those are like human systems designed to try and exercise control.
Yeah.
But if someone actually had the ability to see your thoughts or remove your thoughts, it sort of wouldn't matter if their society tried to be benevolent. Like, how could that not be abused if you could remove thoughts from someone who disagreed with you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not inconceivable that they could do that. But I think it also supposes that the individual here is important, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Is like the individual Singer himself is not important. He's just some other worker, and like he's not even looked on very favorably, right? So if he has dangerous thoughts, then just get rid of him.
I did think it was kind of funny when Frank brought up that they even do have a worker, even if it's a low wage, low social class worker doing this job.
Yeah,
because classification of sincere or insincere coordinates, like that's literally malignant or benign tumor. Replace this radiology job, look at like 10,000 images. Like it's such a simple net to build.
Right. Yeah, it's like Frank mentioned, it's like the AI ML problem where you can have a machine like learn these things many times, but most, you still have a very good chance of it being wrong. And so like the Singer talks about his intuition and, being able to kind of like discern the coordinates of being sincere or insincere just by kind of his experience. So it's interesting that even such an advanced civilization, still their AI still can't keep up with and be reliable enough.
I also had another idea, and this is like probably the last conspiracy theory I had for this chapter. I never had as many as I did reading this chapter. But when we had the horrifying dream, which honestly, I don't even like to read this chapter like too close to bed because it's very scary. The dingy recollection chapter where they just start falling into the pit of sand and they never escape. He says, like, do you think that only sophons create illusions? Do you think the only illusions are inside the Hadron Collider? And I was wondering if civilizations beside Trisolaans made sophons, which they should, maybe sophons are just like everywhere and no one really has a high level of AI. Like AI never actually takes off because everyone's in there messing up everyone else's quantum computing.
Yeah, or maybe something even more advanced than sophons, right? Like because sophons have blind zones and they can only go for so long, and they seem kind of like a precious resource on Trisolaris. So
it's super expensive to make. So yeah,
right. But they also talk a lot about the efficiency and economy of just destroying worlds. So maybe it's not even worth the effort of even if you can create sophons, en masse, like maybe it's not even worth the effort of sending them to all these worlds. Maybe like these beings that can communicate over super membrane, like don't have to even send them. They just like understand that everything is happening over that super membrane.
That's true. Singer was like, just sort of by looking in our general direction, he's like, yeah, I sort of get the idea of these messages.
Right.
This one is saying this. It was just like jaw dropping. Like he doesn't need to get even close enough to, like he can't even get permission to look through the big telescope. So just like peering through a pinhole He's like, I basically get the whole idea.
Right. Yeah, from who knows how far away, right? Like it's that he's in the Orion arm of the Milky Way, but like, or the Milky Way galaxy, but who knows like how far away that he actually is from Earth, and just like looking through like a rudimentary telescope, or not, and maybe not even a telescope, maybe he just understands, the world. And he was able to glean a lot of information out of, like the whole story of like how we unfolded the communication between us and Trisolaans and like the exact time and everything. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. I guess this one is going to be pretty short. We're almost at the end of the book here. I think we'll have a lot to talk about next episode. I mean, you're looking forward to last part, being done with this series?
I am looking forward to the last part. And what I realized is that you two are great co-hosts in many ways, except that I actually don't know how the book ends. So somehow you managed to spoil everything except for the actual ending.
I think we told you some parts of it. Maybe we didn't tell you all every part of it, but
I love that feedback. You guys are great co-hosts, but I don't know how the book ends.
I think I know parts of it, but I don't know.
Do you think that the actual ending, is more grim or more bright than how the Singer chapter has ended?
Do you think the Singer part ended on a positive note or a negative note?
I think it was very hopeful. It was like flying to see Yun Tianming. I was like, we're going to finally see Yun Tianming. He's had his glow up. He became a vegan. He bought her this pad, and now they're going to go hang out together.
So I think Lucy Shin knows how to wrap up a story. So I think it will be wrapped up in a very satisfying way. I don't know. I don't think there'll be lots of loose ends. I don't think there'll be an opening for a fourth book, but I guess I would assume it ends on a somewhat positive note.
Okay.
It's controversial, the ending.
Oh, is it?
It's it's
yeah.
Is it ambiguous?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's ambiguous if it's happy. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Happy ambiguity?
Yeah. I guess it depends on your perspective, right? And it has a lot to do with like Chengxin's character, I think, is how you interpret the ending. But good news is we only have the next episode. We're going to talk about it, and we'll find out. I think that's one of the more interesting topics that I want to bring up, is like how you do consider the ending of the book, and like, what's your perspective on it. And there's a lot of cool stuff that happens, regardless. In the next chapter, a lot of cool science stuff happens. So I hope and expect that you will enjoy it, and that you will have enjoyed the entire book and the series.
Yeah, I hope so as well. Thanks for listening. Leave comments by emailing us at rehydrate@fastmail.com or on Twitter @RehydratePod. This is the last episode of the Remembrance of Earth's Past Spoilercast, but please join us when Thalia joins the main show for Season 5, Episode 7, Our Star, which will cover Part 6 of Death's End by Lucy Shin.